think about sea turtle conservation, you probably picture that one iconic moment, right? That tiny little hatchling, scrambling out of the sand and making a run for the ocean. It's this incredibly fragile, powerful image, and it really makes you wonder, what are we actually doing? What are the specific strategic things happening to give that little guy the best possible shot? Most of us probably just think of a hatchery as, I don't know, a protected patch of sand, maybe a fence. But when you actually look at the conservation protocols, the real rulebook these places run on, you see they are operating on a whole different level. These are strategic centers. So this deep dive is your shortcut to understanding that. We're using the source material, the Guardian's Cradle, Sea Turtle Hatchery Conservation Protocols as our guide. And it really is a playbook for long-term species management.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission is to see how these facilities are part rescue center, part science lab, and, part community hub, all designed to fight these huge threats, predators, poachers, pollution, all at once.
That's the key right there. This isn't just passive protection. The documentation we're looking at, it outlines this really sophisticated 7-part strategy, and it guides everything from, managing an egg's microenvironment all the way to reshaping local economies. It's a whole system. The main goal is, of course, to get those early survival rates way up. But the methods are so technical. So we should probably explore these 7 functions, and I think we should start where the danger is most immediate, with the egg rescue and relocation.
Yeah, let's jump right in. Function 1. Egg rescue and relocation. This sounds really active. It's like triage. The staff and volunteers, they're not just waiting. They're out there patrolling beaches, acting like biological bodyguards, and they're looking for nests that are vulnerable. But it's not just about poachers, is it? The protocols say they have to look for specific environmental threats. What makes a nest a hot zone for them?
Well, it really boils down to 2 things: predictability and accessibility. So a nest is vulnerable if it's too close to the high tide line. It's just going to get flooded, drowned. Yeah. Or if it's in an area with a lot of natural predators, think foxes, monitor lizards, that kind of thing.
Okay, that makes sense.
And critically, they also look at how close it is to human development. A nest near bright lights is a huge problem because the hatchlings get disoriented. They'll crawl toward a hotel light instead of the ocean. So those have to be moved immediately.
And once they find a nest like that, the clock is ticking. The source material talks about how precise that transfer has to be. You can't just, scoop them up in a bucket?
No, absolutely not. You have to be incredibly careful. If you accidentally change their orientation, just turn them upside down, that can be fatal for the embryo.
Wow.
Exactly. And once they're moved safely, that brings us to the second function: incubation and monitoring. This is where the real deep science starts. The eggs are reburied in these secure enclosures inside the hatchery. It's a totally controlled environment.
And controlled means more than just safe from a fox digging them up. This is where I think it gets really fascinating. The monitoring is designed to deal with climate change, right?
Absolutely. This is where it gets very scientific. The staff are constantly checking the temperature of the sand. Constantly. Why? Because sand temperature determines the sex of the hatchlings. It's a thing called temperature-dependent sex determination.
Right.
Right. Warmer nests give you females. Cooler nests give you males. And with global temperatures rising, nests are getting hotter. They're skewing heavily female. So the protocols actually say the staff sometimes need to use shading or even watering techniques to cool the sand down a bit, just to get a sustainable male-to-female ratio.
Wait, hold on. So they're not just protecting eggs, they are actively engineering the gender balance of the next generation? To stop the population from collapsing later on? That is so much more than a fence.
It is the definition of strategic intervention. They are literally correcting for a demographic imbalance caused by a changing climate. This kind of meticulous monitoring, it gives them the optimal conditions that nature, under all this stress, just can't reliably provide anymore. And that step alone just massively boosts the number of healthy, gender-balanced hatchlings that make it.
Okay, that perfectly sets up the next critical moment, the third function, hatchling release protocols. So once they hatch, the timing of their release is the next big strategic move. We know they're released at night or very early morning, which, seems obvious. Avoid predators, avoid the hot sun. But the protocols are really specific about minimizing the time between hatching and release.
They are. The best practice is to release them as soon as possible, usually within 24 to 48 hours after they emerge. And that urgency, it's all about one critical thing: imprinting.
Imprint?
Yes. It's essential for their future navigation. As that little hatchling crawls across the sand of the sea, it's absorbing all this vital information: the texture of the sand, the slope of the beach, and, most importantly, It's orienting itself using the Earth's magnetic field. It's building a map that allows a female, maybe 30 years later, to come back to that exact same beach to lay her own eggs.
So if you keep them in a tank too long, or if you just drop them in the water without that crawl across the sand, you're basically wiping their internal GPS. You're making the whole rescue pointless for the next generation.
Precisely. That mad dash across the sand isn't just about survival. It's about securing the future of the species.
Okay, so we've covered the young. But the mission isn't just about the babies. Let's shift gears completely. The fourth function is about the centers as rescue hospitals, the rehabilitation of injured turtles.
Yes, these centers are often the last hope for adult turtles that made it past the hatchling stage but then ran into, well, us. The protocols have these very detailed clinical guidelines for managing serious trauma.
And what are the common injuries? I imagine it's pretty grim.
It is. The case files really tell the story of our oceans right now. You see horrific damage from fishing gear, net entanglement that leads to, flipper amputations, deep cuts, and we're seeing more and more internal damage from them eating plastic.
That must be so resource intensive. Specialized tanks, surgery, medicine. Do the protocols say whether they should prioritize saving, say, 1,000 eggs over one adult? That seems like a tough call to make.
That is an excellent point about resource allocation. And the guidelines see both as vital, but for different reasons. Egg rescue boosts the numbers, the sheer volume. But rehabilitating an adult, that saves a proven survivor, a reproductive individual who is incredibly valuable to the gene pool.
So you need both.
You need both. And the care is intense. Clean tanks, medical attention, sometimes months of observation before they're healthy enough to be released. There was one case in the source material where a turtle had eaten so much plastic, the X-ray just looked like a compacted trash bag. It's a stark reminder of why this intervention is so necessary.
It's triage for a whole species, but we know the impact of these places goes way beyond the beach and the rescue tanks. We have to talk about how they fit into the bigger picture, the human ecosystem. And this brings us to the next three functions, which are maybe the hardest ones. They're about systemic change, not just immediate rescue. So our fifth focus, education and awareness.
Yeah, these hatcheries are so important as educational hubs, and they're targeting three different groups. You have tourists, you have researchers, and then, most importantly, the local communities.
That's people who live there.
The people who share the beaches with the turtles every single day. For them, the education is really specific. It's about the life cycle, their protected status, and the real consequences of the threats. Not just pollution, but the legal and economic fallout from poaching. The goal is to build a sense of local ownership.
And that outreach feels like the perfect bridge to the sixth function, which I think is the most profound part of the whole strategy. Community engagement and providing alternative livelihoods. Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't just to save turtles now, it's to make sure the community around them stops being a threat tomorrow. How do they even begin to tackle that?
This is where it gets really complex. It involves creating actual sustainable jobs for former poachers, for people who might otherwise need to take eggs or hunt turtles just to feed their families.
So what do they do?
Well, it's not a handout. The hatchery basically hires them into the conservation effort. They become paid patrol officers, using their local knowledge to protect the nests they used to poach. Or they're trained as ecotourism guides, showing visitors the hatchery, explaining the process.
So you're turning a liability into an asset. You're taking someone with intimate knowledge of nesting sites and paying them to be a protector. How is that sustainable? I mean, where does the money come from?
The protocols are clear on this. They have to diversify their funding. A lot of it comes from blending regulated ecotourism with international grants. The money a tourist pays for a guided tour to see a nesting turtle. That money goes directly into the salary of the former poacher who is now protecting that very turtle. It creates this self-reinforcing economic loop. Protection becomes more profitable than destruction.
That's brilliant. It makes the hatchery an economic engine for the whole community.
Exactly. And they also organize things like community beach cleanups, which keeps the nesting sites safe for females returning years later. It all links together.
Which brings us to the seventh and final function, that one working behind the scenes but underpinning everything else, research and data collection. This is the hatchery as a living laboratory. It's absolutely vital. The hatcheries have to collect precise, continuous data. It's what drives evidence-based conservation. They track everything. Nesting patterns, how many nests, which species, where they are. They record hatching success rates inside the hatchery versus outside to prove their methods work. They even do genetic sampling to monitor the health of the whole population.
And that data, it doesn't just sit in a file cabinet there. It's shared with universities, government agencies. It's the hard evidence used to argue for new laws, like protecting a certain beach or changing fishing regulation.
Exactly. It connects the hands-on work on the beach right back to national policy. It makes sure conservation isn't just guesswork.
So to pull it all together, these centers are working on 7 different fronts at once. They're high-tech labs managing gender ratios, they're animal hospitals, and they're economic catalysts that are fundamentally changing human behavior. So what does this all mean for you? It means the survival of these amazing creatures doesn't just rest on biology, it rests on this strategic blend of biology, sociology, and economics. They really are the guardian's cradle. They fill this huge gap that human activity created. But looking at everything we've talked about, from the rescues to the rehab to the community work, it forces a really big question, a provocative question, about where we should put our energy and our money.
Okay.
If the real ultimate goal is long-term survival, where you don't need constant intervention, which function gives you the best return? Is it the immediate necessary act of rescuing eggs after a threat appears? Or is it the long-term structural work of providing alternative jobs for former poachers so that the threat never even shows up in the first place?
Right. Triage versus prevention.
Exactly. That tension between the immediate rescue and the long-term social fix, that's really the future of protecting a species. It's something for you to think about or maybe explore on your own.